I got so excited. Good afternoon, colleagues. Before proceeding to my presentation proper, please bear with me. I just want to show to you a 2 minutes video as to things that can go wrong. What can go wrong? That is part of risk management. So here we go. Hindi ako magsalita. Tagal. Well, my topic is risk management and conflict management in construction. Wait. Let's start with risk management and construction. The earlier video, you can see the communication between the operator as well as the spotter. If what can go wrong here, there are so many risks involved. One is in that particular video, you can see there's a big risk if the spotter and the operator do not see or understand each other or do not form a teamwork. Another is the skill of the operator. It's also risky if they don't have sufficient experience along that line. My presentation outline is such that I'll present to you the overall construction environment first, and then define what risk is, and then how to handle risk. So this is risk management. And I'll be mentioning several case studies. Now, who are the people involved in construction? You can see some of them there. but I want to present it to you in a more business environment type. Before you start a project, the project manager or project engineer will be dealing already with the designer as well as the construction management consultant if it is a huge, large project. Now, why the designer? Because you have to check whether you really understood or you will be able to interpret the design of the designer. The construction management consultant, uh, you know, as you implement the project, there's planning and control. There is direction. That's part of your construction management skill. Now, there should be a good coordination between the project manager or project engineer, as the case may be, or both, and the construction management consultant, so that there will be no issues, conflict, because that's the next topic that we'll be discussing, conflict management. Because right from the very start, there should be a good teamwork between the project manager and the construction manager. Now, if we will take a look at our internal environment, you will be having so many things that will pose risks in management, in construction management. The first one, the local labors. You know, a contractor will always bring in 20-30% of the workforce, people that he has worked in the past, he or she had worked in the past. Then you have to hire local laborers, mainly because it will be cheaper that way, you know. But what are the risks involved? The skills. You're not sure of the skills of the local laborers. You're not sure of the productivity. You know, if you have worked with somebody, with your foreman, with your lead man or your steelman in the past, if you have worked with them, you know exactly, more or less, the skill of these people. But if you go to a new project and you'll be hiring local laborers, you don't know them, so you have to be very observant during the initial months of operation. Then the materials and heavy equipment availability. Again, as a contractor or as a project manager, you will bring in whatever resources there are from the company. However, there will still be some lag or inadequacy of your heavy equipment. Sometimes it might be better. It all depends on your analysis to get heavy equipment nearby. Well, you will have your cost analysis along the way, and then the basic materials, the sourcing it out nearby your project site. The main intention really is the bottom line will always be cost. You know, where can you minimize expenditures? That's the reason why sometimes there is you provide your own equipment or you lease equipment. If you are based in Manila and your project is in up north, in Kalinga, Apayao, you don't have to bring all your heavy equipment up there, mainly because the cost involved. If your project is hydropower, for example, yeah, and the project site is in Mountain Province, I've seen a project where they have airlifted the heavy equipment and the rebars are being airlifted mainly because you still have to construct your own access road. So actually, I should have mentioned to you earlier that the usual practice before you start the project is you project what are the possible constraints, what will be the possible risks that are involved. prior to actual implementation. So here comes local labor, then sourcing your construction materials, and then the availability of heavy equipment and the like, you know. Now, another is that most likely might be risky is the construction methods. There might be some differences in interpreting or in implementing projects. Sometimes two engineers are talking, but they differ in how to attack a certain activity. That there is a risk involved in this as well. Oh, nag-ulit yung local labor. Then the quality control. Let me just check, but nag-ulit yun. Okay. Anyway, the external environment, yeah, you know, wherever you go, whichever the location of your project, you have internal environment and external environment. One external environment is, of course, insurgency and criminality, which you cannot easily control, but it's also risky. So you should know how to handle these things. And then the immediate environment, the community around the project area. Now, there, you know, as they say, you should know how to work with the community where your project is located. There are pros and cons along this line based on our experiences, you know. There's also the local government units. You have the barangay, even the barangay, perhaps for the contractors, for the project managers, project engineers, you might have encountered some difficulties also in barangay. It could either be positive or negative. Kung negative, you should know how to handle negative consequences in dealing with the barangay as well as the municipality. I'm sure you might have experienced already their request to be security officers in the project area, or they might have fiesta, or I will be explaining that. Anyway, we have several case studies that will be discussed later on. Now, there is also a big involvement now of the Department of Labor and Employment, particularly on project safety. On a sometimes at random, they might visit the project site and check on your how you implement project safety. So it's so risky for people, for example, for buildings. You know, without any harness, and you're climbing and you're working all over a medium-rise or a high-rise building. Those are the things that the risks involved that the DULE are looking at. So what can go wrong? As I said before, yeah, you go to war, but you should be ready with all your guns and ammunitions. Now, before you start the project, you have to analyze what can go wrong. Right from day one, you should be thinking about this already. But the moment that you have identified things that might go wrong or the risks involved in a certain project site, you have to be ready. What can be done? You have to be ready with solutions. You should know how to handle these things. So the ultimate end here is what will be the negative impact of this particular risk to the project. So what is a risk? Risk is a danger, hazard, constraint, probability, chance, likelihood, or a possibility. So it's very, very common, knowingly or unknowingly, you might have experience applying or encountering different risks in project implementation. You might know it, but others might not know it, that there is already a high risk of of things that might occur in the future. See, in the earlier video, you know, if you do not know the weighted capacity or the weight of the heavy equipment, for this case, bulldozer or a crane, especially crane, because the center of gravity is higher as compared to a bulldozer. Also, the weight and the truck that you are loading, and also for this case, if you transport heavy equipment, you're not sure about. There's a big risk on the driver. You don't know if they are on drugs or they have experience of really loading. Like the last case whereby it's turning right, but he was moving too fast, and he is loaded with a heavy equipment. So these are the things that you have to analyze. But I have more examples later on. Now, if you have identified the risk, you should know how to manage the risk. Take a look at the schematic diagram. Risk is actually a process in itself. You have to identify, you have to assess, and then you have to control the potential dangers, hazards, and threats. Yung risk dito are actually the dangers, the hazards, and threats in executing a certain project. Now, if you have identified these things, you should know how to respond or to act on this particular risk that might occur or experience on the project. So there is another definition of risk management. It's a process applied by project managers and project engineers to mitigate any possible concern or danger in a particular project being handled, or an unexpected event that may yield negative impact on the timetable, on the workers, and on money matters, related to money matters. So I think most of us civil engineers now might have experienced these things, but I want to move on. As I said earlier, you might have experienced it, but you're not sure that you're experiencing it. You might have known, but you don't know how to handle it. So this is the essence of our topic this afternoon. As I said earlier, you have the internal, external environment, and mama nature. And nature. These are the sources of risk, There are internal, external, and the nature itself. But then, in risk management, you will be guided by so many things. Let me explain. What are the internal risks that we might encounter? Short of finances or short of petty cash. Because if you're a project manager, of course, you're guided by your central office or home office, no? But then you should have petty cash, because anything goes if you are in the project site. Something might go wrong that you are not aware that you need cash. So you should have cash. How much? It all depends on how you arrange it with your top management. There is an internal risk as well concerning labor groupings. For example, you mix an Ilonggo and Ilocano, but they are both GIs, genuine Ilocano, genuine Ilonggo, but sometimes, especially at night, when they're not working, there might be a conflict. A Visayan and a Tagalog, for example, if there are so many groups within the project site, this usually occurs if you have a multiple component. If your project has so many components, but you are housed in just one compound, especially now with the health crisis. One of the requirements is you should have a secured housing for your workers. Now, Another are accidents. These are internal things, you know. Safety, project safety is a concern of the project manager. Uh, Accidents, kaya nga aksidente, might occur anytime. But with proper education on risk management, accidents will be avoided or minimized, as the case may be. There's also risk on data management. Remember that information is a resource. Now, if you have inadequate information, for example, weather condition, if you're not aware of what's happening, what are the possible what's this weather condition, if there is a there I'll just mention these things in the case study, you know. And then you also have legal issues that is internal. But you know, as a project manager, one of the big risks internally is a strategic blunder, you know, on how to implement a certain project. Now, it's also risky if you do not get top management support. Just be sure that top management is helping you along the line as you implement the project. Now, let's move to external, the information technology, political intervention, and government regulations. So now, let me start with government regulations. There are rules to be followed now, given the health crisis. You have to comply with all of these things. If you notice, even in parlors, in salons, in barbershops, they might have increased their charges, mainly because you should get an alcohol, etc. No, the people who will be serving you will have to use PPE and others. In construction, I mentioned one earlier about housing. There is again distancing matter here. So these are the regulations that the current new normal, as they say, which we have to follow. And workers cannot leave the barracks just like that. You know, there are regulations, guidelines to follow. Political intervention in almost any project, we encounter these things, but you should know how to handle. But what is important here is, you know, the risks if politicians will intervene in our projects, and positive things are better. You know, kung negative yung impact niyan, you should know how to handle them. Kung positive, very good. You can implement the project faster and better. And then the information technology, even communication, because in construction, it's so important to communicate with your head office, with your suppliers, with your equipment provider, and all of those things. Here comes Mama Nature, Mother Nature. It's risky. The impact is work stoppage if there is continuous rain. So here, you have to plot. Part of managing it is you should know what weeks, what days when the rain pour in. If it is pouring, you should know when it will stop as well. That's why there are probabilities. The information technology will come into place here. Then, but if there is excessive rain, you will be encountering flooding. So it will damage some construction materials. It might damage also your heavy equipment, as the case may be. So these are risks that you have to bear. Of course, earthquakes. These are damages to properties. Yung flooding, it might also relate to people who are to the workers. You see. Now, what should be done? You have to avoid risk as much as possible. But The key here is you should identify first what are the potential risks that might occur in the project. If you could avoid, you avoid. If you cannot avoid, you reduce the risk. In business, in construction business, the reason why some construction companies enter into a joint venture arrangement with another company, usually a foreign company, is because of risk sharing. They share on the risk because your liability will just be a percentage of your share in the business. So you have to, it is a strategy of sharing risk, especially for big projects in terms of magnitude and complexity. So there are projects that we might not be skilled in doing it. So we get a partner, but it's also risky to enter into a joint venture arrangement, but you are sharing the risk. So there are certain limitations. Reliability and high cost of modeling and simulations, but it can be done. But you don't need this always, as the case may be. I'm reminded of one project which we designed. We use a lot of modeling and simulations, and it is a flood control project. If it is a flood control project, you can adjust your design by using modeling. No, you can easily adjust the flow of water or the slope and all of these things, the pumping rate. Then you can simulate it using computer programs or doing it physically. I'm reminded of one project. It's a dam project in Iloilo, whereby simulation was done in one full basketball court, so that you are minimizing risk by doing simulation. What will happen if the volume of flood water will be this much? What will happen if it will be maximum flood? So you do simulation. Next is lack or inadequate expertise to develop and implement a risk management plan. Now, it's not easy to prepare a risk management plan. You have to be equipped. You might have experience. Sometimes the best method if to handle this thing is a group of engineers applying the different experiences in past projects. You can pour in your knowledge, and then you design a risk management plan. Now you utilize historical data. You analyze historical data. You think of track records of the people who are involved in developing the risk management plan. Now, there is also a big problem as far as failure to view the bigger picture. Sometimes there are engineers. Well, I'm sorry to say, it's like a horse. A horse. They're blinded. They just see what they can see like this. In project management, you have to view the bigger perspective. In construction management, you have to view everything, resources management, all of these things. So you have to take a look at the bigger picture. What is the importance of risk management plan? In risk management plan, you can come out with better decisions, business-wise and field decisions. Field decisions are actually actions that ought to be done given a certain problem or given a certain situation. It's so nice, while you're implementing a project, almost every day there is a minor up to a major problem whereby you need to attend to and make a decision. Uh, that's why I said decisions can be business-like, or it could be technical, or a simple field decision. That's one importance of risk management. Before an event or situation occur, appropriate procedures and systems are developed. Thus, the impact is to minimize a threat, or to avoid a certain threat, or minimize the risk, or avoid the risk that you are facing. So projects, what's this? The concerned workers and assets from harm. Actually, that's not project. It should be to protect all concerned workers and assets from potential harm. So the intention of risk management is actually to protect all concerned workers and the assets that are already in the project area from potential harm. The harm I mentioned earlier could be internal, external, or nature. Okay, so I want to discuss a few things. Let's consider as examples a dam, high-rise building, long span bridge, waterworks system, and an oil platform. Well, we will exceed 5 p.m. If I will discuss all of these things one by one. You know what are the risks involved? Ito kasi is different yung number 5, no? Kaya I did not consider it's one as a detailed analysis of risk. Yung oil platform, the risk that you will encounter, alam nyo ba ito, sometimes nasa kwento nasa ocean o offshore. Ang risk dito is yung workers, boredom. They will be bored looking at each other, or bored looking at the water for several months or several years. That's why some project proponents, they send home some of the workers every 3 or 6 months, rest for another 3 to 6 months also, so 50-50, come back, but with pay yon. Kasi it's difficult to work in oil platforms. It's very risky. Now, let me show to you a matrix. Dam. I prepared this matrix to cite some examples. The risks per construction environment. If you recall earlier, I mentioned about the construction environment. I mentioned also what are the potential risks. But now we have specific cases. Let's start with you are about to construct a dam. If you construct a dam, there's a huge river. You cannot construct the dam if the water continues to be flowing. You have to divert the water, either using several techniques here. No, yeah, you can do tunneling, you can do copper damming, so that you can work on the dam. Otherwise, with full of water, you cannot do it. Now, to a designer, what are the potential risks? If you did not imagine pretty well that there are fault lines nearby, because the rule here is it should be 50 meters away, 50 kilometers away. Well, sometimes 25 kilometers away from the location of the dam, pwede na, no? But for a designer, ano ang nightmare niya? What can happen? A dam break. So dam break is, you have to conduct a study before actual, you design the dam, but you have to analyze the dam, assuming that there will be a break, a dam break. So you have to analyze properly the foundation. You have to analyze properly the flow of water, the seasonal variation, the maximum flood, and all of these things. For a construction management consultant, the first nightmare could be coordination. There are a lot of parallel activities for dam construction, upstream, downstream, diversion, and all of those things. And of course, there is no downstream. Usually it's always up because you want to either divert or to create a reservoir. So project safety is essential. So this is the situation. The physical environment there is it's on top of a mountain. So project safety is a major concern of a construction management consultant. Now the community or communities, as the case may be, most likely your project location, there are several settlement areas or scattered houses, but they are manning certain area for farming purposes, agriculture purposes, livestock raising, and all of these things. There might be resistance from the residents near or within the project area. So that's a potential risk that you should absorb from the community. There are other risks involved here. Insurgency is one because they have their own community. I'm reminded we have experiences when I was still with NIA that the dam location is headquarters of our friends up. It's not just an ordinary headquarters. It's the regional center of the Visayan region. You know, it's a regional, very big, and that the place that they are in are actually that's the dump site. So yeah, you have to do a lot of things here for them to leave that area. You know. Well, of course, if your project site is on top of a mountain, sourcing materials will definitely be a big problem, and accessing. That's why before you start a dam construction, you should have access roads. But again, if you construct access roads, this might be very expensive if you do not know or if you do not understand the terrain or you do not understand the materials over there, you know. So let's try high-rise building. It's many of you might have experience because it's a dam. Sometimes it's very, very selective. Very few engineers have the experience of constructing a dam. Ito, I think you're very familiar. For construction management consultant, yung isang risk dito is the submission of monthly reports, you know. Most likely there are some delays. And another is the quality control. Ano yun, kulang, lack of something. You know, if it is high-rise building, it's located usually in urban area. So yung community mo dyan, most likely may mga houses and residential area. Eh. So, and you have plenty of workers. Most likely there will be a lot of food vendors around, and it's crazy during break time. Sometimes it's difficult to control them, not unless you have. That's part of management already. You have guidelines on how to handle these vendors, because it's really crazy during break time, lunch time, or dinner time, especially if the workers are dependent on the vendors. So that's one big risk within the community. Now, on the barangay level, if you notice, take the case of Cebu City, where there are so many construction going on right now. How can you deliver construction materials whereby the traffic in Cebu is, excessive, you know, traffic jam and all of these things. So how will you handle this thing? delivery should be done at night or early in the morning. What is the other risk? You know, the construction workers who are working the whole day, supposed to be there sleeping. And then here comes the deliveries of materials, etc. And especially if you use dump trucks and you dump the aggregates, you know, what will happen? The impact there is the following day when these workers will be working. Uh, uh, their productivity might be lessened. They might be sleepy or whatever. So these are things that you have to be observant. Now, another problem for high-rise building is the solid waste disposal or even liquid waste disposal. There's a mismatch, especially if there are no, how do you call this, pipelines for your solid waste. And if the garbage collector do not get your waste, solid waste, periodically. So you have to analyze the risks involved in a certain project site. Now, in terms of materials and equipment, limited space. It's one of the risks. So how will you handle limited space? So it should be proper scheduling of deliveries. Lack of space for even workers, construction workers, especially now that you have to maintain at least 1 meter each. So you will go to double decker or triple. Yung bed mo, di lang double decker, baka triple na ngayon eh. Considering the distances. Not only that, even yung mess hall or the dining hall, you have to reschedule. You have to reschedule eating. Well, anyway, you have to adjust to the present situation. The other problem is delayed installation of tower crane. This one is a big risk, especially if the delivery is chop, they do not deliver all the components of a tower crane at one time, or the assembling. If you assemble all those parts, if it's also risky, it will take some time, well, sometimes high-rise building, you have 2 or 3 story basement. So you have to determine, you have to compute the capacity of excavators. Again, which is getting to be normal that you really have to work on it. Delayed payments. This is because the premise of my presentation is the project manager or the project engineer. So financial is part of a major responsibility of the project manager. As I said earlier, there are additional facilities for you to be compliant, like the foot bath, the alcohol stand, even soup. You should have dispenser for liquid soup. So we have to live with all of these things. Now, let's take the case of a bridge. Construction management nightmare is sometimes the pile driving. Also the crane capacity. There are many situations because if it is a bridge, sometimes you have an abutment, you have pier. Yung pier kasi kung saan nandun yung tubig, itatayo mo yung mga piers. If there is an abutment, there's a pier, most likely you will be doing pile driving. So they really have to control this operation. The project manager will have to complement with the construction management consultant on how to handle these things for bridge construction. Kasi the moment that you're done with the bridge and yung foundation work mo, it will be very easy already because most likely the girders are offsite, manufactured offsite. So you simply have to install, but you'll be using a lot of cranes in putting in place the different girders. Also, in my experience, and perhaps your experiences as well, a big risk within the community is, for bridge construction, they're so excited to see a pile driver working. They're so excited if they see a crawler or an excavator working. So there's a big crowd. You have to control crowd, and not only that, you have to position barriers so that safety will not be compromised at all. Now, of course, the community will be looking at employment opportunities. And again, it's getting to be normal within the community, the food vendors. There is a market. It's time there is a project. There is a market for food vendors. How will you be handling them? These are your construction workers. Eh kung may nagkataon lang, there is one food poisoning, eh di na-compromise na the whole workforce if they are or part of the workforce. So we have to be extra careful along this line. Now, for bridge construction, the environment is such that usually you connect to islands or two bodies of land. So there's a long time to mobilize equipment or to transfer equipment from one. So you will have multiple equipment, one from one side, the other on the other side. So there are risks involved in doing this. Now, the delayed deliveries normally, of course, but with a very good materials logistics engineer, this can be solved. Because if you expect deliveries from a remote location, or let's say from a factory located in Manila and your project is in Visayas, you'll be using RoRo, but you have to compute the capacity of the barges that you'll be using. Otherwise, it will also be very risky. Next is yung batching plant mo, no? Because in bridge construction, sometimes there are portable batching plants that you place in a barge already. It all depends on the construction method that you want to impart. Now, concrete batching plants could be placed in a barge, especially yung mga piers. Concrete pouring could be a big hassle if you do not have the right construction method. Now, again, petty cast might be a big risk. If you do not have petty cast in remote areas, and you have to buy something which are all cash, credit cards not utilized, you have to siguro sa first week pa lang, you have to check if you can use credit cards. If not, you should have a petty cash. Now, the next question is, how much should be the petty cash? So where the petty is small, pero sometimes you have to buy materials which are not included. Sometimes included in the shipment. Sometimes meron wala, bolts and nuts na kalimutan, or whatever part nakalimutan. Perhaps even plates, steel plates nakalimutan. So you have to do it in the project site and fabricate it. So you need money along this line. For waterworks systems, design assumptions, technical specifications and construction drawings are some risks of of the designer. Design assumptions, of course, if the designer is equipped or have the experience, hindi niya ginagamit ang novice o kaya yung first timer na engineer. Yung design assumptions, that's the reason why I'm always a believer that somebody should be reviewing designs, you know. In design parameters pa lang, dapat you should review that already. Yung technical specifications, I've heard this many times over na dekahon naman yan eh. Pero, you know, if there will be conflicts in the future, it's also risky to just get it from the box, you know, kaya dekahon eh. Yung Bible mo kasi, ang laban mo lang if there will be complaints, if there are incidents that will occur, will be the plan, the designs, the working drawings, the technical specifications and the construction drawings. Kasi ang risk ng designer dito, kung kulang ka ng is the construction drawings might be inadequate. If it is inadequate, you have to supplement it. So the contractor, the project manager will have to prepare some construction drawings and have it approved by the designer. So you have identified the risk, but you know how to manage such a risk. Now, for the construction management consultant, you have the, you know, kasi yung sa main transmission pipeline, you have the alignment. And then the elevation, because sometimes you follow the terrain. But if it is pressurized, you need not follow the terrain because it's pressurized. Tatakbo. Ang problema sometimes is kung masyado, if the water will come from a dam and it is in a high location and it's upstream, the velocity of water might be too strong. That's why you need breakers. Lalagay ka ng breaker in between. Now, yung construction management consultant naman, alignments and elevations, coordination, because you can do so many things in waterworks system simultaneously or in parallel. Meron kang source development, may treatment work na, pwede mo gawin. Transmission line kasi naka-design na yan. So you have the construction drawing. So you can just proceed. You can use different groups who will be performing certain tasks. But the risk involved for the construction manager is coordination, communication, especially in areas like this. Kung walang signal pa nga so it will be difficult to communicate if you do parallel activities. Next is yung construction method. Sometimes the contractor might have some ideas. Ito, isang example ko ito, differences in construction method. If the terrain is a difficult terrain, and if you want your dozers, the bulldozers, to go down, and you have difficulties of going down because of the terrain, but there is a nearby property that you can use temporarily or lease temporarily so that all your heavy equipment can go down the line, you should do this. But if the construction management consultant will tell you that that's not a good idea because it's additional cost, there is a difference in opinion already, and there is a conflict already. So what are the risks involved? Kasi ako na contractor, I prefer na to use the next lot nearby para the heavy equipment, the dozers can go down, and then you work downwards going up rather than down going up going down, you know. Anyway, there are experiences encountered, but one of the risks involved, if not properly, if you design, all potential problems should have been considered in the past. But there are cases whereby right of way for the transmission line are not or were not acquired initially. So this become a risk to the contractor. The problem was diverted to the contractor instead of the designer or the owner, as the case may be. Because right of way, dapat hindi na problema ng contractor yan eh. The contractor, kaya constructor, you will just, but sometimes there are issues on right of way. Yeah, it's not only on waterwork system, even drainage system or flood control facilities that are involved. Now, most likely for waterwork system, the water source, there will be rough, very rough terrain because it's far-flung area, no? These are the water source are located in far-flung areas, and then sometimes the elevation is really like a roller coaster, you know. I'm reminded of the water, one of the water sources of Cagayan de Oro. It's the water is coming from Bukidnon, but it passes through Misamis, so the water source is taken from a huge river. So during construction, the terrain is very rough. You have to construct access road. Then there are so many challenges involved in constructing because it's very far. The distance is several kilometers away. I can also cite one example. If your drainage system is something like 17 or 20 kilometers away, so you might be using pumps to divert for water for you to bring water to the outfall, which usually is a river system. So those are some cases of risk and how to manage risk. You have your own experiences, and perhaps after this session, you can do your own exercises, no? Risk identification and managing risk is so important, and proper decisions will occur if you know how to handle these things. That ends my first presentation. This is the second presentation, which might even be interesting for you. Conflict management. Oh boy. Kung walang conflict, smooth sailing yung project. But there are no challenges if there are no conflicts. Let's see exactly what I mean. This is my presentation outline. I will define what conflict is, what are the causes of conflicts, and how to handle or manage conflict. What is the purpose of conflict management? How are you going to manage conflicts? Handling difficult, there are difficult persons that ought to be handled. And then what are the strategic approaches in handling conflicts? Thereafter, again, I'll be citing several examples, but I might hit 5 o'clock, beyond 5 o'clock, to give due justice to conflict management. You know, if there is a struggle between the husband and wife, there is a conflict. If there is a dispute, okay, let me go back to construction management. Kalimutan mo natin mga asawa natin, no? Kasi this is very much applicable sa relasyon ng mag-asawa. Sa construction, there are so many disputes that you will be encountering. There are so many struggles, difficulties, so many arguments, including coordination meetings. And sometimes, may pasaway, there are oppositions being raised. And most likely, there are disagreements. Kaya may divorce. What are the causes of conflicts? Unang-una na dyan lalo na yung kung nagiinuman na differences in opinion. there is an issue raised, tapos you differ in opinion. In a formal meeting, there's no harm to raise a different opinion as compared to who is chairing a meeting. That's why coordination meeting you identify ano yung differences in opinion, but you have to settle. That's the bottom line, no? Wag mo nang paabutin ng the following day or after 1 week, which I'll be explaining later on. Another source of conflict is absenteeism. If a worker or even the project manager, kung naglalamierda siya, absent siya, siyempre sisitahin ng construction worker yan and vice versa. Kung yung construction worker nawawala, missing in action during work, that is a cause of conflict. I mentioned earlier, construction methods being used. It's also a cause of conflict. Occasional missing at work, yun, parang nag-absent ka rin yan eh. Kasi if there are no guidelines set by the project engineer in and out of the workplace, there will definitely be conflict. Pagbalik mo si Santena yung construction worker. Hindi sila nagkaintindihan. Pero paano kung walang regulation, what will happen? Mag-argue yung agreed na construction worker. Yung right of way acquisition, yan ang madalas na conflict kasi yung settlement ng presyo kaya nagkaka-conflict yan hindi magkasundo sa amount. Then in a construction setting, if you are involved with indigenous people, there are sets of values that they have kasi cultural yun and you have to respect those values. Pagka sinabi nila na meron yung heritage site sila, tapos ilulubog mo ng tubig para may conflict kayo dyan. Indigenous people, we have to respect yung values nila. Or our Muslim brothers, they have set of values. You have to be aware and conscious about these things because it will become a source of conflict. Then perspectives, yung ideas mo, no, or different ideas in approaching construction methods. Ito usually ang conflict between the project manager and the construction manager, or as the case may be, the project owner. Kasi siyempre ako project owner, makikialam yung project owner dyan sa ginagawa mo So that's another source of conflict. Now, there are personal situations that affects workers' productivity. Kung yung construction worker mo, ginulo siya ng asawa niya the night before, yung productivity of the construction worker will be affected greatly. Ngayon nga, ang common cause ng itong personal situation ito sa text Kung ano ng mga tinetext nyo ganyan maya-maya, nag-aaway na. So, next is money for operations. Yung purchases, petty cost arrangements. Pero ito, this can properly be managed, yung money matters, if there are guidelines that ought to be formulated, implemented, and absorbed by the parties, Now, another source of conflict is there, kasi ginagawa ko rin to, ginagawa ng karamihan, there is a periodic productivity assessment kung hindi nagustuhan ng construction worker yung rating niya, i-rate mo from 1 to 10, ibinigyan mo siya ng 4 lang, alam mo, emotional din ang mga yan they're very emotional So this should be the way to manage it is you have to explain what you are rating, why are they rated, and all of those things. Why are they penalized? because of bad productivity or because of some other causes. Please, by the way, please write your questions. I'll be answering them fully well. What is conflict management? The process of handling disputes and disagreements between two or more parties. There's no conflict kung ikaw lang mag-isa eh. Kalaban mo, sarili mo. But madalas ganyan. Have you examined yourself? Minsan ang problema, sarili mo eh. So there's a conflict between yourself and yourself. So there's a disagreement. What is the purpose of conflict management? You want to minimize, if not to eradicate, the negative impact of the conflict. Ang laging nasa isip mo is the organization as a whole. How will it impact the organization? How will it impact the project in terms of timeline, in terms of quality, and in terms of timeline, quality, and productivity, and money matters. It should be within budget. Remember, the objective construction management. Then, if there's a conflict, you have to search a win-win solution. Now, the development of a win-win solution involves 2 or 3 parties. Kung hindi nagkasundo ang dalawa, you need a third party na kakilala ng dalawa to resolve the conflict. See? You cannot solve by yourselves. You need a third party who is known by the 2 parties to search for a win-win solution to a certain conflict. But of course, what is the bottom line of conflict management? The bottom line of conflict management is to encourage the concerned parties to come to an agreement. There should be an agreement. If there is a disagreement, we will discuss that later on, kung saan aabot. Now, how do you manage conflicts? Conflicts can be settled formally or informally. As I have mentioned in past lectures, so for my case, I get more results in informal arrangements than formal arrangements. Backdoor negotiations are very effective. Or using a third party to manage a conflict or to resolve a conflict is very effective. It could be formal or informal. So the first consideration in my list is effective communication skill. Dealing with the concerned parties to resolve a certain issue or a problem. Now, if nothing happens, if both of you have strong personalities, you have to identify the points of agreement or disagreement and then discuss. That's usually the starting point. Then you have to be transparent. You have to explain facts, the real situation. You have to be transparent to the other party and vice versa. For me, if it is work is work. Professionalism will come in. I think your personalities should be set aside. You have to focus on professionalism, not on personalities. There are people that very difficult to communicate with you. That is a personality issue, but in attacking a certain situation, put in professionalism of work. Openness is a very good approach. You have to be open. You should not be handling conflicts with a fixed mind already, fixed mind. Meron akong solusyon, ganito, ganyan eh. So you're not open already for other suggestions. So here comes the conflict. so many arguments will be coming into the picture. Now, next is patience. Ay nako, there's so many people who are impatient. But then patience is a virtue. But I don't have that virtue, sasabihin ng iba. So you will never resolve a conflict if you don't have patience of really dealing with it, you know. I mentioned this earlier, use a third person known by the two opposing parties. Another proper approach is mediation. It is related to a third person thing, you know. Somebody should mediate into the picture to settle a conflict. Now, a more formal approach is setting up a grievance committee within the organization. Now, in a grievance committee, ang parties dyan involved, management, either project manager, project engineer, and the identified non-formal, informal leaders of the labor group. So, among themselves, in a certain grievance committee, will analyze the conflict and manage the conflict and come out with a solution. So you have to operationalize a grievance committee, especially if yung workforce mo goes into hundreds and thousands. It might be good to have a grievance committee para before it will become a big problem na resolve na ng committee. Now, kung talaga hindi nagkakasundo, nandyan na yung arbitration . So sa Department of Trade and Industry, andyan na yung mga arbitrators natin, others. Kung di pa rin magkasundo, punta na lang sa korte kasi that's the ultimate . But in construction, conflicts should be resolved as quickly as possible. If you go into arbitration, you have to select an arbitrator known by the two parties, and you have to pay money. If you go to court, the burden of expenses and the burden of mental torture will be there. So if it could be resolved by the grievance committee or mediation from a third party, it might be a better option. Palamig lang ang ulo. Minsan talagang mahirap na magpalamig. So no option but to go into arbitration. But if you're still not satisfied, go to the courts. Now, in any organization, sometimes there are difficult, quote and unquote, difficult persons. Now, in dealing with difficult persons, you have to stay focused on certain issues or certain events or situations. Stay focused ka lang. Do not go beyond that para matauhan din yung difficult person na yan. Now, there is no substitute if you have rules and regulations in construction. So you have to stick with your rules or guidelines as the case may be. Ang worst scenario dyan is you use the law, applicable law. Sometimes, by not talking or saying less, you can handle a difficult person. Pabayaan mo na lang siya magsalita ng magsalita . Baka ma-resolve na. You come out with a one-liner lang, titigil na siya. Ang mahirap kasi, if there is a conflict, is you blame each other. Yun na ang may dispute na yan, pagkakasakitan na, lalo na if it's too emotional, if you are too emotional. Pero one thing I learned in life is as you grow older, if you become senior, it will be easier to be solving conflicts because you have the knowledge already on handling people in the past and how you really handled this thing. But you really have to be sincere in dealing with people. I know in management there is such a thing as role playing. Role playing. You play a certain role mainly because you want to resolve a conflict, But sometimes it's not always the right approach. So another approach is talk to an elder or informal leader, respected by the person that you're in conflict with. Maski sa preso meron silang ganyan kakusa, may elder sila in construction, the foreman is not necessarily the informal leader. Sometimes there are other informal leaders. Now, the informal leaders can resolve conflicts as well, because they are the people who are respected. Now, let's see, what are we going to do here? What is the strategic approach in conflict resolution? My God, I have only 30 minutes more. Nauhaw na ako. This is my third Zoom meeting today. Now, the first step is to gather the facts or the information related to a certain conflict. So, in short, you are identifying already what's the conflict, what's the cause of the conflict, and all of those things. If you have all of these things at hand, you have to assess this conflict. What are the possible threats or impact in the overall construction operation, you know? Ano ang impact nito? Kung kunti lang impact, pababayaan ko na lang Itutulog ko na lang isang gabi Pero if there is a big impact in the construction site or the project as a whole, we have to resolve such a conflict. Next is you have to, you have all the facts with you. You have assessed these facts. You have assessed the situation. Next is to formulate your tactical options. And there are different options available. Should you compromise with the aggressor or person you are in conflict with? Or can you accommodate them already? Pagtiyagan na lang kita, dito ka na lang sa akin. I'll just accommodate you. Get na problem child ka Then another is avoidance, but avoidance is not really a very good conflict resolution. Iwasan na lang kita, magsalubong tayo, iwasan kita. Kung may argument, iwasan na lang kita. Well, sometimes it works, but most of the time it doesn't work. Yung avoidance, no? Now, if you are too much aggressive, you want to defeat yung party that you're in conflict. That's another approach. It is just a tactic. It's just a strategy. Otherwise, you proceed with the legal processes. The legal process is always your last approach. Now, whatever is your tactical operation, you have to prepare a plan of action. Kasi yung plan of action, how will you proceed? Assuming that gagalaw yung kalaban mo in a different direction, you have to be ready to attack a certain situation. So yung plan of action mo should contain different alternatives. And of course, the last step is a contingency plan. What if your proposal will not be accepted? So there should be a contingency plan. But under the plan of action, if you have different options already in resolving a certain conflict, plus you have another contingency plan, so be it. So you will be successful in conflict resolution. I want to have more time answering your questions. So I'll just go over this quickly. Again, using the same matrix. For a dump project designer, a big problem between the designer and the project manager is the inadequate construction drawing. No? Minsan sasabihin ng project manager, bakit ko gagawin pa yan? Ikaw ang designer. Tapos nandun na, nagko-conflict na sa argument na ganun lang, may conflict na. Binayaran ka na gumawa niyan dapat ikaw gagawa. Bakit ko gagawin? Pero yung kasi, yung construction manager, if you're the contractor, hindi lahat nakikita ng designer yan because I know there are some designers na walang construction experience. Yun ang mahirap. Kasi they don't know the actual situation. And there are also some project implementers who cannot design. So whichever way, wherever you are, you have to resolve the conflict. Sa construction management consultant naman, if you construct a dam, ang nagiging conflict madalas sa contractor is yung quarrying, yung weather condition, project safety, erosion of embankment. No? Yung quarrying kasi, para walang conflict niyan, you should have you have to submit a plan to the construction manager where you'll be quarrying what will be the volume, what will be the effect. If you quarry, can it go back to certain acceptable situation? Ganun Yung weather condition, minsan masyadong matapang yung project manager, go, trabaho lang ng trabaho, kahit na andyan, hindi maganda ang weather condition. If it is a road construction lang yan, was out ka na Pagka go ka lang go, yung curing mo, hindi mo na-attain yung proper curing period. So those are some problems Another is yung project safety kasi yung, as I said earlier, yung dam construction kasi, it's a very difficult physical environment. Ngayon, madalas kasi gumagawa ka ng embankment in dam construction or a copper dam to divert water. Now, it's either you divert water or you guide where the water should flow so that you can work on the dam site. So, ganun ang mga conflicts yan So, in short, sa conflict management naman, it's more of communicating properly with the construction management consultant so you can attain what you want to attain. Yung community, yung resettlement as usual, and then the employment, yes. Let's just move to high-rise building, no? Sometimes designs are interpreted differently, and that's a cause of conflict with the designer, no? But if you're in doubt with the design, it would always be good that you request for a coordination meeting and you will be interpreting whatever things that that should be resolved. Again, the inadequate construction drawings, that's also a interpretation and inadequacy of construction drawing. Now, ang concern palagi kasi ng construction manager is the timeline, no? So delayed implementation is a key of conflict with the project manager. Sometimes hindi mo masisisi kasi that's the trabaho of the construction manager, yung quality control. They have to check on the quality and di kayo nagkakasundo. So there is a conflict. And madalas kasi if you do not submit on time, there's also a conflict. Within the community, if you are constructing a high-rise building, ang problema dyan madalas noise disturbances yung debris tumatapon sa mga kapitbahay Tapos, siyempre, nainip din mga construction workers. Nasa loob sila ng compound palagi. So, they loiter at night. So, dapat, whoever is manning yung gate, there should be a curfew. Kasi magtatrabaho sila the following day. Again, I mentioned earlier, yung solid waste disposal. For high-rise building kasi, yung sound barriers sometimes is required. Kasi kung mas mataas ka kaysa yung mga kapitbahay doon, it will become too noisy for them, especially at night. Kasi nowadays, we work at night. It's called night work. Kasi kung if you're the project manager, you come into shifting. may shift, one shift sa daytime, one shift sa gabi kasi you're in a hurry to finish. Or if you are, how do you call that, yung crashing your schedule, so you have to work at night, and then it's so noisy, disturbing the peace and quiet sleep of the neighborhood. So sound barriers are could be a solution to it. Inadequate formworks, yes. Unreported accidents. Kasi madalas pinagyayabang zero accident. Yung pala, hindi nire-report na may accident pero hindi na nire-report kaya zero accident. Anyway, importante yung kasi yung accident record, no? Kung wala, it means that you're a very good contractor. So sa finance naman, yung inadequate petty costs, some materials and supplies will have to be procured. Not necessarily nakalump siya sa isang package, but that's it, no? Sa bridge, ang concern talaga dyan is the construction method at saka yung off-site fabrication. Kasi sa off-site fabrication, the construction manager will have to visit two locations or 3 locations, as the case may be, no? Part of safety, laging sila, kasi parang police kasi yung construction manager eh. Uy, wala kang harness eh, so baka mahulog ka dyan, wala kang harness. So yung mga ganun eh. Of course, for sa bridge kasi, flooding, kasi may river underneath. If you do not have sufficient information concerning flood situation, it will become a problem as well. Kasi I could cite a very specific example when we were doing a bridge construction in Bohol. The difference in the elevation between the normal water level and the bunkhouse is about 25 meters. That should be more than enough. You are very safe with that. But it was raining, not in the project site, but it was raining in a different part nasa upstream of the river. It was raining. So sudden na bumulusok ganyan ang tubig. But that's not the problem. Ang naging problema dyan is yung dam sa upstream nag-release ng tubig kasi baka masira yung dam, nag-release siya. So suddenly tumaas, umabot sa 25 meters eh. Natutulog yung mga tao gabi pa. So kita nila mababasa na sila. So luckily it did not last that long. Kasi siyempre isasara rin yung gates ng yung gate ng dam eh. So important. Nangyayari kasi yan eh. It does not necessarily mean that if it's raining in your area, oh no, it's not raining in your area, but it's raining in upstream, somewhere upstream, you are not at risk. So there is a conflict already along that line. Waterwork system, yung designer, kung mali yung hydrologic study niya, maging problema. Hydrologic saka yung hydraulics siya, no? Construction details. And all of those things. Yung sa barangay naman, yung water rights issue, it's always a conflict yan. Yung excavation permit for waterwork system is a very big problem. If you do not know how to handle City Hall, you should know how to handle them para walang problema yan. I'm rushing because I want to listen to your questions. I think I'll have to stop at this point. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat. I'm ready to answer questions, ma'am.
Right. Thank you very much for your very informative discussion, Dr. Padernal. We have a lot of questions here. Before I start my question, I just would like to recognize our audience from different parts of the world. So we have also from because I have my former students who are in Dubai and Qatar, Singapore.
Hello.
Hello. They're watching us, sir. Yeah. Shout out din kay Sir Mike Bailon. Ayan, may mag-question daw po sa kanila, ay siya mamaya. And also to my colleagues from Adamson University, may question na agad actually si Dr. Ganiron. So that would be my first question for you, sir. All right. All right. So as I mentioned, the first question will come from Dr. Thomas Ganiron Jr., my colleague. He would like to know what are the merits and demerits of using expected monetary value technique for risk quantification in construction projects. So for the information of everyone, expected monetary value is a statistical technique in risk management used to quantify risk and calculates the contingency reserve. It also calculates the average outcome of all future events that may or may not happen. Answer. So what would be the expected merits and demerits of using this kind of ENV technique?
Merit and demerit of?
Using expected monetary value. For risk quantification in construction projects?
Well, these are mathematical models which will yield certain results, but you have to balance it with experience as well, practical experiences. You know, mathematical models, the probability that it might occur is possible, but it's also possible that it might not occur. So there is a balancing act here between using mathematical models and practical experiences. I think that's the concise way of approaching your merit and demerits. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Terrific. So for the second question of Dr. Ganiron, he would like also to know what industry advancements could be introduced to improve conflict management in our country, in particular in the construction industry?
This is on a case-by-case basis, actually. We differ in physical conditions. We differ in approaches. But the bottom line will always be a settlement on a particular conflict or risk, handling risk. So that's how it should be approached. Yeah.
All right, thank you, sir. Okay, so let us accommodate now the question from Engineer Vitog. He is asking for your advice, sir, in managing risk coming from communist rebellion.
From
communist rebellion, sir. The friendly people.
Well, I have so many experiences because most of our projects really in remote areas. Now, one approach is searching for whoever their leaders or relatives or people who are respected within their organization. Communication is the best tool. Sometimes they have some requests to you, not much being demanding if they know who you are. You know, if you deal with them properly, it should be okay. Now, the thing here is the right approach is really proper communication and searching for a third party who can do mediation on your behalf, knowledgeable by the two parties. And you'll be, I think you'll be successful along that line. May mga runners.
All right, thank you, sir. I think, are you happy now, Engineer Christopher Bitog? You know how to handle now the situation. Okay, so for the next question.
Oh, sorry. Can I just mention, you have to analyze who these people are. You have to check their temperaments also. You should know their experiences. You should have your own internal investigation who they are, and it will be easier to talk to them.
All right, thank you, sir. Okay, so let's now proceed with the next question. Come from Engineer Romualdo Lex Garcia. So for projects with risk register, how often should we convene and update this document? So for the information of everyone, again, a risk register is a document used as a risk management tool and to fulfill regulatory compliance, acting as a repository for all risks identified and all risks identified. So how often would you should we convene and update this document, sir?
Well, as the need arises, there is a project cycle. You should know how long it will take. You have to analyze it because sometimes they come back to you. So in short, it is situational. It all depends. You have to be very observant. You have to check when things will change or will occur. So you have to be flexible along this line.
Actually, sir, just to add on in one of our projects in Marikina River Basin, beforehand, the amount of rainfall is not as much as today. So before there was no flood in Marikina, but apparently because of the climate change and some changes in hydrological conditions, so the risk factor and risk conditions also vary. So I think it would depend on the type of project.
Yeah, I'm very much aware because that's one of my project upstream of Marikina River and Montalban. I'm involved in this project, flood control project. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Again, actually, one of our, I would commend our ASEAN engineer, Melvin Candelario. He is very interested. Yes, I think 2 or 3 questions on my list. All right, for his first question, only if there is a such thing as construction safety in the Philippines, what is the marginal cost more than which it will no longer feasible for a contractor or constructor to spend further? Like for instance, when a contractor would rather prefer death incidents over or just near miss fatalities.
One by one, we'll start with this now. Nowadays, even the Department of Public Works and Highways, they will agree with you if you put in as a cost item the PPEs or the protective equipment like harnessing, safety boots, and all of those things. Depende sa project yan if it's bridge construction, flood control projects, ganyan. So you just charge it as a project cost. It is a cost item. It's not a cost item that the contractor will just absorb. No, you have to put it in the overall project cost. Now, sometimes there's also a conflict. There's an argument here. Sasabihin nila, di ba meron ka na dun sa ibang project? Uulitin mo na lang, gamitin mo na lang sa next project mo. Pero actually, no. You're entitled to put in the PPEs in this particular case.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
The second one, please.
I'm
I'm counting.
The second one, sir. On conflicts between a designer and a contractor, like what you had mentioned a while ago, sir, it has long been a practice for designers merely providing engineering drawings of concept, but the minimum required details. How do we reconcile when a contractor misinterprets such minimal info and hence fails to translate it in actual implementation? And
ganito yun to minimize the conflict, the risk involved here. You have to communicate. That's why before you start the project, the first meeting should be with the designer and the construction manager. And then you have to lay down your cards. What are the rules of the game? Ano yung mga parameters that ought to be undertaken by the parties, that by the three parties, the designer, construction manager, and the contractor. So that's how it works.
Okay, actually he has a follow-up question on that. Would it supposedly suffice to require shop drawings for designer's approval and confirmation of contractor's understanding?
Yes, kasi ang designer, I'm sorry to say, hindi kumpleto yung pagdating sa lalo na if they did not visit talaga yung project site eh. Kasi there are so many variables if your project is not a building. Yung building kasi kita mo na kaagad yung physical environment mo eh. Pero other projects, mahirap kung if you're the designer, kung di mo nakita yun, general lang kung gumagamit ka ng topographic map, whereas luma na eh, kasi karami ng standard na topographic maps na nagagamit eh, luma eh. May mga nangyari na in the past eh. So, magkakamali talaga yung design. So, what will happen is the contractor will prepare a nag-feedback eh.
Sorry, sir.
The contractor will prepare a shop drawing and have it approved by the designer. Tapos ang middleman dyan will be the construction manager para magkasundo. Okay, can we have the third question, please?
For the third question for Engineer Melvin, let me stop for a while for that. Let me give a chance to Engineer Jeffrey Simagala. Sir, is there a rule of thumb, crude approach that will give an engineer the basic idea of how much is reasonable in terms of managing the risk?
Oh, of course, that's the reason why I personally advise everybody handling projects that before you start the project, you should prepare your own risk management plan. So again, if I may just do it quickly, you have to identify what are the possible risks, what are the different events, situations that might occur within the project area. And then isipin mo, mag-iisip ka ngayon, if these things will happen to me, to the project, what will I do? Ililista mo na yan. But by the time na pumasok yung situation na, you'll know exactly what to do. Okay, so it's so important to plan these things. It's better to take your planning longer and encounter less during implementation than to shorten the planning stage and encounter more problems during implementation. So that's how it works.
All right, fantastic. So next, the question comes from Engineer Orly J. Biray. With regards to handling difficult person, what tip or advice can you give to those who are first-timers or newly hired engineers assigned as a site engineer?
Diba, I mentioned several situations earlier. So siguro you can just go back to all of those things. But you say less, be more patient. Those things, just go over what I mentioned earlier. Do not be too confrontational. Pasensya mo lang siya, pabayaan mo siya magsalita. Tapos tiray mo sa isang sentence lang, tapos na. The other way is sino man yung kakilala rin niya, mga kaibigan niya, or kakusa, kagrupo niya, kausapin mo yun. And let the group, kasi magkakahiyaan yan eh. If a person belongs to a certain group, tapos pasaway siya, mapapahiya siya sa barkada niya. That's how it works. Okay.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, this question comes from Engineer Elvin Fahotana. Sir, in your opinion, what is the role of effective risk management as a moderator to mitigate the effect of risk factors on the performance of the construction project? Such application in reducing the time and cost, such as also overruns.
I think I mentioned that earlier. Pero Hindi, pasensya na. Kaya talagang pagod na ako eh. Kaya kung paulitin ko na naman yun, sinabi ko kanina eh. I think you have to be more attentive na lang.
Okay, actually, sir, that is the second to the last question. The last question by ASEAN engineer, if you may allow me, sir, because it's about environmental. So if you may allow me to answer his question. So let me
Sige, I will
read the question.
supplement.
Yeah, sir. If there's missing, kindly fill in the blank, sir. All right. So have you encountered such as objection citing environmental risk in dam construction for hydroelectric power plants, where some LGUs and NGAs contended it to be against or significantly impact their food security, such as fishing or fishery hatchery, or actually he mentioned this is one of the disadvantage of the renewable energy. Okay, actually, sir, we have this kind of situation from one of our NIA projects now. I think the good strategy here as an environmental engineer is to come up with a good environmental management plan and monitoring plan. Okay, so this is our role in we could provide information to our client how to mitigate to lessen the negative impacts of the project. So one of the proposals that we could lay down to our client is such rehabilitation programs for those affected aquatic or marine areas, like provisions. If there are mangroves, you could provide seedlings for mangroves or nursery for mangroves and even for fishes. And also, if there would be some fishermen during the construction period that can be affected or it can be impacted by the project, we could have provisions for them for proper compensation. Yan, that can be affected by the project. And so I think this is our job as an environmental engineer in doing the environmental impact statement, and also to lessen the environmental impacts in the project. Yeah. I hope I have answered your question.
Can I supplement? No? Kasi
thank you, sir.
we have a similar project as well. But this one is on flood control, water supply, bulk water supply project and flood control. There is such a thing as resettlement for those families that are affected. And there is also such a thing as livelihood replacement. Now, those who are affected in terms of livelihood, there should be a special arrangement. Now, for aquatic things, you can either go downstream or you can go upstream beyond where the project area is. Upstream or downstream, that's one solution for that. Or you replace the whole thing. It's really livelihood replacement kasi there are so many small businesses derive in that particular area. Kasi pati yung mag-uuling meron din mag-uuling dyan. So you have to replace, give them another area to do the the uuling business, you know. So it's a combination of resettlement in terms of housing, resettlement in terms of their livelihood, and then you replace whatever loss livelihood na nangyaring ganon because of the project.
Okay. Right. We have learned a lot today based on the presentation of Dr. Padernal. We have learned about the construction environment, the different risks that we were encountering in the different construction categories. We have mentioned, Dr. Padernal already mentioned the different case studies and also the construction conflicts and even the conflict management that are being done in the construction, and even the risk management. I think it's really very we have learned a lot today. The time is already 5. Perhaps
can I have one last statement?
Okay, sir.
Can I just mention that risk management and conflict management is part of the overall construction management. Hindi siya sa project, kasi project management will include project identification, appraisal, financing, mga ganun eh. Subsequently, yung operation and maintenance eh. Risk management and conflict management are two important components of construction management. Aside from yung resources management, yung mga ganun, yung project safety and all of those things. I hope that I have conveyed the right messages and approaches in dealing with this. You can send me emails or text messages if there are other special concerns in construction. Perhaps we could help you resolve some conflicts or identify some risks that could be managed properly. Thank you so much.
Okay, well said, Dr. Padernal. Perhaps I can turn over again to our very good gentleman, Sir Eric. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Doc. Sir Renzi, maraming salamat. As usual, marami na namang tanong sa project management. Mukhang may part 3 kayo, Sir Renzi.
I-delegate ko na. It's part of management skill to delegate.
Ma'am Donna na rin sumasagot ng ibang questions. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Kasi sir, envy, sir eh. Masusunod, sir, envy. Tsaka water, sir. Hindi ko pala magawa yung presentation ko, sir eh.
Sige, ma'am. Sa next natin na webinar.
Yes, sir.
Anyway, thank you again, Sir Renzi. Medyo sulit yung extension natin sa time. So, thank you, ma'am Donna. So,
my pleasure din po, sir.
Before we, actually may isang question dito. Actually, for Ma'am Praxi actually.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Ma'am Chairman.
Tingin ko lang kay Ma'am Praxi about, may nagtanong lang kasi about yung ACPE accreditation.
Hello.
So, hindi ko lang kung masasagot ni Ma'am. It's about yung, meron daw kasi mga nag-apply na, tapos na interview, and they're waiting na lang daw for the conferment. So sabi ko, hindi masasagot ng PIC because this is parang sa PRC. So baka lang meron kayong...
Anong issue? What's the problem?
Yung conferment po kasi.
ACPE.
Baka may mga nagtatanong na kung kailan po yung online conferment. Ay ma'am, sorry, nakamute po kayo ma'am.
Proxy. Ma'am, naka-off ka.
Nakamute si ma'am.
Nakamute ka.
Nakamute.
Okay.
Ma'am, nakamute.
Wala pang schedule of the next it was postponed because of the lockdown. Wala pang schedule.
Okay, ma'am.
I was about to ask Dr. Renzi kasi he just gave me the alignment matrix for the construction management engineering, and he mentioned something. So, President Bong, shall we name it Project and Construction Management and Engineering? Ang dilemma namin,
Sabi ko kasi, it all depends on the focus or the team.
Because ASCE mentions construction engineering and management. Pero Dr. Renzi says project and construction management.
Okay.
And then my other colleagues say PICE's terminology is construction management and engineering. And we're going to have a meeting on Thursday with the CPS committee. So I am at a loss on the...
Can I explain again? With your permission, Ma'am Praxi, I want to explain the difference between project management and construction management. Yung project management kasi starts with identifying the project and then appraising the project, financing the project, bago construction, and then operation maintenance.
Yun nga yung sinabi mo kanina.
Ang project management kasi is planning, organizing, staffing, controlling, coordination, project safety. Yun ang construction management. So ngayon, my position is, it all depends on the team or the objective of the organization, whether you want a more holistic manner or focus directly to construction management. Ang kasi yun, nasa sa inyo.
I think it will depend on the PIC officers, President Bong. So we have to decide the proper terminology for the specialty group, referring to that project and construction management. Yun lang. So
Okay.
siguro we can have a meeting one time kasi
Yes,
kasi,
ma'am.
kasi sa
Okay,
ASE
okay.
it's construction engineering and management. Pero sa PIC it's construction management and engineering. But Dr. Renzi here is the chairman of the specialty group. He proposes project and construction management. So
Mas mas macro kung if you include project management, construction management.
okay,
Kung yung
perhaps the
construction
other
management is
listeners
a
can
micro.
add something to
Pero
that.
not everybody have that experience. You have the opportunity to be involved in identifying project, financing, appraising, detailed engineering before you will construct. Kasi construction management is nandyan na yung mga plano andyan na yung pera, you just construct That's a big difference.
Okay.
We will be taking note of the suggestion really of our chair. This is a special division.
Sige, 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 okay. Yeah, we'll deal with it
we
some
will,
other time.
Get back to ma'am.
Okay,
Immediately
sige.
on
Thank you,
Thursday.
thank you.
Okay.
We'll invite ma'am sa meeting ng ISG rin para at least
Sige.
lahat ng specialty divisions.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah. What's better? Para
Okay.
naman doon. Okay.
And we will have a meeting on Thursday and I'm going to present what we have produced. I already have for the structural and for the construction management engineering group.
Okay po,
Okay,
ma'am. Thank
okay,
you.
thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Magha-hide na ako ulit.
Ingat po, ma'am. God bless
You
po.
too. Stay
Thank
safe.
you.
Bye-bye.
You too, ma'am.
Okay po. So, short announcement lang po again. After nung closing remarks, before we end the meeting, may lalabas po na poll evaluation form. So please fill it up and submit before you leave the Zoom webinar meeting or the Zoom webinar. If hindi po siya lumabas, magkakaroon po ng poll button at the bottom of your screen. Please click and yun po. The certificates and materials will be uploaded sa PICE portal after po ng June 19. Please wait for announcements sa FB page ng PICE. Make sure you're registered as a member. Kung hindi kayo member, sign up to become a member of PICE. Kung member po kayo, update your profile because you need it para po ma-access yung portal po later on. Kung may mga outstanding arrears pa po kayo, please settle it para po maging active member kayo ng PICE. Last day po natin is on Friday. It's on structural engineering. So those who have registered, please save the date. And then those po na sa FB Live, again, abangan nyo na lang po ulit sa FB Live po, naka-broadcast po ulit kami. So for the closing, Press Bong.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. So, kumusta na po lahat? So we have a very informative and interesting session today, from our very well-experienced and expert resource speaker, si Sir, si Doc Padernal, especially on risk management and conflict management in construction. So we learned so much from these very important aspects of construction management. And we are really lucky to be part of this session this afternoon. So I would like to really express our profound thanks to our speaker. Talagang pinagod natin si Doc ngayong hapon. So Doc, thank you very much, Doc Padernal. And of course, our panelists, si Dr. Donna Tayari.
Pleasure po, sir.
Salamat
Always
again.
a pleasure.
And of course, si Ma'am Praxi. Thank you, Ma'am. And the board of directors, the members of the board of directors of PICE. Si Director Eric, ISG Chair. And of course, our secretariat. And to all our members out there, na andyan pa rin, So for a very successful session of the webinar lecture series this afternoon, a big like naman dun sa FB, and a thumbs up to all of us. So thank you very much. And of course, pabalik-balik na ako nito, but I'd like really to encourage all members, yung sa ating registration, to register on our membership update campaign, sa ating membership portal. This is actually a big project of the PICE National this year. Para naman we can really contact you all and can serve you better, no, with this new membership portal that we are really going to push through next this year. So also as what have Director Eric has have said, na yung webinar session, certificates, and the lecture materials can only be downloaded and accessed through that new PIC membership portal. Kaya dapat lahat mag-register. Lahat talaga dapat mag-register. Kahit fellow ka, life ka, regular ka, or associate member of the organization. Yun namang those naman civil engineers that would like to join PICE, pwede rin dun, no, sa registration na yon. You just click the link and you register, no? And doon naman sa mga bago, may babayaran lang, no, yung initial membership dues ninyo. And with that, I would like again to say thank you very much for attending this session. So I should say then again, always be proud to be a civil engineer. Mabuhay tayong lahat at mabuhay ang PICE. Thank you very much and God bless us all. Salamat.
Thank you.
Salamat po.
Thank you.
Ano lang, shout out daw sa mga PICE chapters natin. So we have Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Riyadh, Oman, Singapore. Sa Philippines naman po, Cebu, Iloilo, Ilocos Norte, Quirino, Masbate, Tarlac, Pampanga, Baguio, Iriga, Sorsogon, Batangas, Davao, Zamboanga City, Cagayan de Oro, Pangasinan, Bulacan, Quezon City, Antipolo, Parañaque. Yan po ang mga nagpapa-shout out ng mga ating chapter members na nandito ngayon sa Zoom at FB Live. So,
Sir, hindi ko kasi na-mention lahat eh. Sorry Thank you, Sir Eric, for compensating.
marami po katibiliran ngayon. Ayan po. So,
Thank you po.
thank you po sa inyong lahat.
Sa harap ninyo.
So yan na po, ang evaluation form, please fill up and submit. Tapos after po, you can already leave the meeting. See you po dun sa mga nag-register. See you on our last day on Friday po, 3 to 5 p.m. po ulit. Thank you. The
Thank
speaker
you
po,
po.
the rector,
Be safe everyone. God bless po.
Ma'am Praxi,
Thank you po, Sir Bong, Sir Eric. See you.